Well, hello and welcome to Frame.io Live. My name is Ryan. I'm an enterprise customer success manager based out of New York. And today I'm going to be taking you through all of the various admin roles and responsibilities associated with Frame.io. Really looking forward to today's session. Just a couple of things before we hop in. I really want to make sure that this is a session that helps you and make sure that I address any questions that you have as we go along over the course of today. So feel free to find that comment section. If you have any questions, please let me know. Feel free to drop those in the chat now. Would love to hear where you're tuning in from and anything you would like to get out of today. It also goes for the entirety of the session today. Feel free to chat me as we go along. Would love to make sure again that I'm addressing your questions and helping set you up for success. But today's session, we are going to be covering exactly what an admin does within Frame.io. This role is a little bit unique. They have the ability to create teams, also invite in users into the space and adjust some of the global account settings associated with your Frame.io account. We are going to be covering all of that. But I am an enterprise customer success manager, and part of my role is just ensuring that teams are set up for success and really have all of the information at their disposal. So I am going to be going through a couple of examples as well, just to outline some of the ways that you could also set up your account. Then we're going to transition over into my Frame.io instance, and we're going to walk through all of the different settings that exist, just to make sure that you're aware of everything that you have at your disposal. I will be highlighting a couple of features that are enterprise specific as we go along today. But if you have one of our team, our pro, or even one of our free plans, fear not. I'll make sure that all of these settings are applicable to you over the course of today's session as well. I will also be using that comment section as we go along to drop in a couple of support articles that just reinforce some of the things that I'm chatting about. Also, you could share those articles with members of your team who might not be present. As a quick aside, we are recording today's session, so if you signed up, you clicked in that email, you'll also receive this as pre-recorded content. If you're watching this pre-recorded, welcome. Happy to have you. Let's go ahead and just start by chatting a little bit about what an admin is. The admin has the ability to create and manage workspaces, also add, remove, and manage users. The admins also manage some of those global account settings that I mentioned, and typically I'll see admins really work through with the account management team. So folks like myself, if you are an enterprise account. Well, let's go ahead and start with just a couple of common terms, starting with storage and organization. Teams are the highest level of organization that exists within your account, meaning that teams are the varying workspaces where you'll actually see projects and content. So there's elements of visibility, permissions, and access that you'll also want to consider when you're thinking about how you want to set up teams and also who gets invited into teams. In this particular example, you can see that the teams that I have set up are Green Knight and Marcel the Shell, and then various users are then invited to view content on a per team basis. Users can be invited into specific teams. They also can be invited into specific projects. I'll hop a little bit more into that when we talk about user roles and management. If you are an enterprise account, you can create as many teams as you would like. We call this multi-team management, just an easy way for you to be able to parcel out the different work that you have to do in the different workspaces based on the users that need access. I know that I mentioned projects. Projects will always live within a team. Here within this example, the projects that I have within my Green Knight team are 30-second teaser, full trailer, and archived, but projects will always exist within the team space. And once a user is added into a team, they can view all public projects. I would like to highlight that individual projects can also be made private. There's a lock icon next to the archived project in this example, but content is also archived at the project level. So if you're planning to do that within enterprise, it could be important to make sure that you set up your projects with that in mind as well. Files and folders then make up the content and what exists within projects. Ultimately, this is what occupies your account storage. You actually do have to click into the project in order to see all of this, but something that's cool about this media panel here is that you can create a ton of folders and really structure this based on your individual workflow. But of course, for all of you who are here joining me today, you probably have different use cases for how you actually manage your content, who reviews content, how you need to set it up. Most commonly, I work with brands, agencies, and folks that work in media and entertainment. So I do want to go through those three examples and just highlight some of the ways that I've seen teams and projects and files and folders built out in the past. Typically for brands, I see teams organized based on a seasonal campaign or various business units. Remember, you can create as many teams as you would like within this space just to help make sure that you're parceling out exactly where content is organized. Projects within the brand space. Typically, I see as independent video projects, maybe for the content you're working on for a specific use case, perhaps even the stage of development, like production or editorial, just to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. And then files and folders can be organized based on approval stage, maybe pre-production materials, proposal decks, lookbooks. Remember, you can create files and a folder structure within your media and entertainment panel. For agencies, this looks a little bit different because typically agencies are working with a number of clients. So typically I'll see those teams organized based on those specific clients, maybe even groups of clients, business segments, or different regional offices. You can set the permissions of who has access to what on a team by team basis. This is especially important if you're bringing in external folks into your Frame.io account. Projects for agencies. Typically, I see organized based on campaigns or projects for a specific client, or again, based on the region where a client or production is based. And then files and folders broken out into assets, deliverables, and files for each project. And moving on to this last example for media and entertainment, typically I see teams as either specific film or television projects or a specific series. That's how I would encourage you to set it up. And then projects organized based on different seasons of a serialized campaign. Perhaps distinct business segments for a film project like development, production, editorial, maybe even marketing. And then files and folders could be structured and customized based on your editorial review and approval process. There are a couple of other roles that exist within Frame.io outside of the admin, which is there on that far left-hand side. The admin does have the ability to make global changes, like I mentioned, also create new workspaces. So they can create teams and also invite in team members. I'll show you that in just a bit. And then team managers fall just directly to the right of the admin. They have some, but not all admin permissions. Team managers can adjust settings for specific teams, and they also can add in new team members into those specific locations. If I were to guess, a majority of your users will be team members. So team members are added on a per team basis. They can create and manage projects, also upload, modify, and delete files, also add in collaborators. So they can add in this additional role and they can share out externally. So they can generate review or presentation links to share with external folks to the org. And then collaborators, they're added on a per project basis. They can also upload, comment, but they cannot delete other users' files, add in other collaborators, and they cannot share out externally. So the main difference between the team member and the collaborator being that the collaborator only has access to the project level, whereas a team member has access to every single project within a team. Collaborators also cannot share out externally. Most commonly, I see collaborators as freelancers or maybe some folks that just need to hop in and out of the account. Any license that you have, you can also revoke or add additional access to. So it really depends on exactly what you need those users to do. But like I mentioned, typically collaborators are external to the org or freelancers. And then reviewers could be anybody who sent a review or a presentation link. They can view, comment, download, edit status labels. You also can control exactly what you want reviewers to be able to do with your account. I would like to highlight that collaborators and up do occupy a license. So admins, team managers, team members, and collaborators, they will all fulfill a seat within your space. Reviewers will never occupy a space because they're simply just viewing any content that you've shared with them. Any of those external stakeholders, maybe even talent, anybody who's looking over anything that you've shared. For anybody who's just joined us, please let me know if you have any questions as we go along today. Feel free to find that chat section. I'm happy to get to any questions that you have today. Let's go ahead and hop on over though into my Frame.io account. We are completely web-based. I'm just moving over into my space here. App.frame.io is where you want to go. We also do have an iOS and an iPad app. We also have an external app called the Transfer app, which would help you upload and download content within your Frame.io space. Let's put some of these concepts into practice though. Let's do a brief tour just of what you're looking at before we actually hop into my settings. Over here on the left-hand side, we call this the account switcher. This just means that if you have multiple access to multiple different Frame.io accounts, you can switch back and forth between them easily. For example, let's say that you're a collaborator within one account, but a team member in another. You don't have to sign out and sign back in. You could just re-access them by selecting the account that you want to be a part of. I'm here under my primary ad agency account. That name is going to match right up here. By clicking here, I can get to my settings. We'll do that in just a moment. But I also have a search bar where I could search for any assets that are associated with my account. If I'm an enterprise customer, I also have access to a secure inbox. This is where I can view any review or presentation links that have been shared with me, just meaning that it's a little bit easier for me to locate any content that's been shared with me as a reviewer. This does require that a user has a Frame.io account in order to actually view that content. And then what I was mentioning about teams and projects, you can see that I have this structure right here beneath my search in my inbox. I have a creative services team, Frame.io live series team, a winter campaign. But then if I open up each team, you can see that then I have the projects that live within it. So my Frame.io live series team with my drip ad project, my social media project. Creating a project means that I could just click this plus button here, and then I'm going to get a couple of options. I could rename this project. I also can determine exactly how I want users to interact with this space. So let's go ahead and create a new project together. Let's say that we are working on a project for winter. I can determine where I want this to live, and then I can determine if I want everybody to be able to see it or if I want it to be private. So similar to how I can mark teams as either public or private, I can do the same with a project as well. So if a public project is open, it means that any team member will automatically have access to it. But if it's private, it means that admins or team managers will actually have to request or add those users in before they view that content. It is important to note that any project and team that you create by default, it is private within your space. So the only people that have access to it are the ones that you invite. But these additional security features can always be added. I also have some notification settings that I could add where I could determine if I want my users to be notified anytime a new person is added, new media is uploaded, or a new person joins. I have control to be able to add or adjust anytime I am creating a new project. And then heading back over here into my drip ad project that is already existing, you could see under my media panel, I have all of my content listed here. I can upload content simply just by dragging and dropping. I could also use our Frame.io transfer app, or I could go up here to the top right and do a new file or folder upload, which would enable me to find and select media that's associated with my account or with my machine and just drag and drop it right here within Frame. These headers up here, review links, presentation links, and C2C connections. Review links will reveal any content that I've automatically or already shared out. So you can see here that I have a full list of all of my review links. The cool thing is I can also see who created it, when it was created, how many individuals have viewed it. I also can set expiration dates and add or remove files to any pre-existing review links, meaning that I could just create one review link and then share it out by just amending any content that's associated with it. Same thing for presentation links. Here in this tab, I'm able to see a full list of all the presentation links that I've shared out, who created it, who's viewed it, and then C2C connections. This stands for camera to cloud connections. Every single account type has camera to cloud connections enabled. This means that you can have your hardware synced up with Frame.io. The second you call cut, that content will be automatically uploaded into your account. This is where you're able to manage that. Over here on the right-hand side, I can see a full list of users that are associated with a project. So by clicking on these tiles, I can then see all individuals that are a part of this space. I can also determine if they're a team member or a collaborator. I can also change the account role just by selecting it, and I can change somebody from a collaborator to a team member, which again would enable them to then view every single project within that team. They then could also share out externally. I can also invite in collaborators right here from this space or also in the back end of the settings. I would like to highlight that for enterprise customers, by default, team members can invite in collaborators. You can adjust that setting. I'll show that in just a moment. But here under this media panel to directly beneath where I can invite in users is where I have the ability to sort, where I can change how I want to view my content. I also can view this in list format over thumbnail format, totally up to you how you would like to view your information. Let's hop back in here though to our account settings. I do want to talk a little bit about user management here. This section here under account, only admins have visibility to, but this personal section, all users will have visibility to. Let's start by talking about some of the settings that only the admins can do. Starting with users, teams, and projects. These three tabs are all very similar in that this is where you're able to invite in users, create teams, and manage content associated with your account. Let's start with teams here in the middle. You could see here that I have a full list of my teams. I could see which team members are a part of this space, how many paid seats are occupied, projects, storage, and access. I can also determine when it was created and the last updated time. Let's create a new team together, though. Let's go ahead and name this one editorial. I also can determine the level of access. So do I want it to be open, restricted, or invite only? If it's open, it means that users can actually view that this team exists. They can request to join. If it's restricted, it means that they could see it, but they actually have to be invited in by a team member or an admin before they are actually able to join into that space. And then an invite only means that that team is not visible at all to any users. It's completely locked down. Just means that a manager or a admin needs to actually invite them in. Let's go and leave this one open for now. I also can set soft allocation limits. So I can determine, do I want users to only have 5 within this space? And let's go ahead and give it a terabyte of space. We know that this is a big team that tends to upload a lot of content. This is a soft limit. If these limits are exceeded, just a bar at the top will show up indicating that you have exceeded those limits, meaning that you could just remove some users or also some space as well. I'm dropping in the chat now an article that just outlines a little bit more about this internal allocation limit. And if you're an enterprise customer, there is a static watermark that could be applied. If this is enabled, it will actually burn a basic watermark into all projects. So there can be a watermark applied for internal or also any external assets as well. You can see here that then I can determine where I want this text to be, but I would like to highlight that this will burn this watermark into any internal assets, including if you download them at a later date. So let's go ahead and save and create this team. You can see up here at the top, it gave me a confirmation that I created it, but then I also have an option to invite in any user that's associated with my account. Let's go ahead and skip this for now because we're going to operate under the assumption that you're creating a brand new team for the first time. You can see here that my editorial team now exists and I get a little snapshot. But any existing teams, you can see under my Frame.io Live series team, I can also see a list of all of my users. I can also see projects and just get a snapshot of how much storage is being occupied within this space. I do have the option to also filter teams based on user and access. So if I wanted to get an overview as well of which users are a part of which teams, I can do so. Just a way for me to be able to have a greater visibility into what is actually occurring within my account, which users are a part of which space. I also have the option to export out any content so I can get a full CSV of exactly what has occurred within this team space. Users. What I can do within this user panel, I can also invite in new users. I can also manage existing users. Starting with inviting in new users, I'm going up here to the top right corner where it says new users, and then I can enter in the email address of these folks. So let's say that we want to invite in Jane Doe. I can determine exactly what role I want them to be, an admin, a team member, or a collaborator. You can invite in as many admins as you would like. There is not a limit to the number of admins that can be added in. But then I can determine where I want this user to go. Do I want them to be a part of this team or multiple different teams? Let's go and invite them into a few. Once I click invite, that user is going to receive an email. Once they click on it, if they have an existing Frame.io account, it will automatically invite them in, or it will also prompt them to create an account, and then they'll have access to that specific team. I can also filter based on the role type of these users. So if I wanted to get a snapshot of who exactly are my collaborators and what team are they a part of, I can see all of that. This would enable me to then just determine if I needed to remove users, I can certainly do that here, or again, determine which team users are a part of. Right now, you can see I don't have any collaborators that are part of my editorial team because I just created it. But if I wanted to see who's a part of my C2C or my creative services team, I can as well. Let's go ahead and uncheck these filters and just view what you can see with these users. You can see who they are, their email address, and their last activity date. I can also sort by my last activity date. This is really helpful, especially if there's users that maybe were invited in, they haven't been active for a couple of months. That could be a great indicator or a time that you could actually remove them from the account. You can also sort based on roles. So you can see exactly who is who, what they do, what teams and projects they're a part of as well. So you could see that for me specifically as a user, that here I am. I'm an admin. I have access to 3 teams and 7 projects. Similar to my teams, I also have the ability to export this view out. I also can multi-select users. So let's say I wanted to just sort and filter based on my last active date. These individuals were they're invited, but they've actually never been seen. So let's go ahead and take some of these. I'm actually going to do a shift and select all. I can determine if I want to add them into a space, but I also can delete them as well. Mm. And then underneath this projects tab, similar to what I was just doing with users and teams, I also can filter based on the individual teams themselves. So I can see all projects that are within each team. So this is my C2C demo space. I also can determine the project users, access, and archival status. I can also export this view out as well just to provide an audit trail if needed. Any questions about this user management, please let me know. A really helpful space, especially for our admins to be able to go and manage these users, add, remove, create. Let's chat a little bit about some of these account settings though. Admins are the only ones who have access to this tab. You can determine download permissions for users. We'll just go through this full list. You can set download permissions. So, do you actually want users to be able to download content? Yes or no? We were just recently working on some editorial content. I invited in a collaborator, but she didn't have the ability to download. So she said, "Hey, can you actually make it available for me to be able to download this content?" That's a perfect example of when you actually want to be able to allow these users to do so. This is account wide. This will apply to every single team within your space. Invites. This is not a default setting, but we can apply it for you. By default, team members can invite in collaborators, but we also can prevent that just by having this option enabled. So if it's clicked on, it means that team members can invite in collaborators, but if it's clicked off, it will not allow those users to do so. I see sometimes that team members don't actually know that this is the case. So for our admins out there, I would remind those team members to either check in with you before they invite in collaborators or also to make sure that this setting is enabled. If you're an enterprise account, please let us know. We're happy to enable this for you, either by reaching out to our support team or to your account rep directly. Secure sharing. This is a enterprise specific feature that just requires that anytime you send out a review link, a user has to sign in order to view it. So a user can create a free Frame.io account. It just means that the only person that could see that link is the one whose email address it was actually shared with. So you can make this a default setting, but you also can determine if it is default, which users can share out a link that is not secure shared only. C2C connections, again, that's that camera to cloud connections. This setting would give you the option to determine which users can adjust this feature. This could especially be important. Maybe you have some camera folks on your team that are collaborators. I would certainly make sure that they have the ability to manage C2C connections associated with your account. Or if you just want a little bit more control as the admin, you can certainly enable that as well. Watermark ID, another enterprise specific feature. This does not apply to this internal watermark, but more for external watermarking. So you can require watermarking on all internal assets just by enabling that here. But you can also enable it for all externally shared assets by enabling that setting here as well. You can determine if you want users to make modifications to any templates that you create. That's all right here within this watermarking setting. But speaking of watermarking, let's create a template together. I'm going to zoom out here and I'm going to create a new template. Let's go ahead and say that this one's for our project. Over here on the right, I can edit select blocks. So do I want the name of the user, their email address, their IP address, the date and time, or any custom text? I can add all that in. Let's go ahead and add in our project name because we want this to match whatever those users are seeing. We also can adjust the text size, ranging from small all the way to huge. I can also adjust the color here. Let's go ahead and make this one teal. I can adjust the opacity as well. I can also rotate it around. So if I want it to be viewed at a certain level, I can. Let's go and adjust that angle. I can also add in a shadow and I can have it scroll if desired. I can also grab this text and I can move it around anywhere on the screen. So let's go ahead and move it here and we can go ahead and just add in this watermark applied right here. Let's go ahead and save those changes. And now this watermark will be applicable to any user who shares out any external features. And then the Apple TV app. This is also an enterprise specific feature because it requires secure sharing for those users to sign in. But you can also apply a 4-digit passcode anytime the app is resumed. So if you want just an extra layer of security for the Apple TV app, that can be applied right here. Cool. Any questions about these settings? Please let me know. Please stop me if anything comes up. There's a couple other features here that I would like to draw your attention to that only admins have the ability to create. One is groups. So let's say you're sharing out a project every single time to the same stakeholders. You can just create a group of those stakeholders. So you can just put in their email address. Let's go ahead and call this one Winter Campaign 2024. And then I can invite them in via email. So let's go ahead and put in my own email address here. I can also invite in my colleague Sean. I can also invite in my colleague Luke, April. I know that again, all these people are going to be seeing things each time. Marlace, and let's go ahead and create this group. Now that this group is created, let's go ahead and go back to the app. And let's say that we're sharing out an asset for review. These approved photos. We know that it needs to go to all of those users. I'm going to go to share for review. And when it says add people here, I can just type in the name of this group. And then by default, it's going to share to all of those users at once, just making it a little bit easier. That way, those users don't have to input an email address every single time, especially if you know that it's going to the same users. I do have the ability to also edit this. So if I wanted to edit in, I could add or remove these users at will as well. I also could adjust any emojis that are applied with this specific group as well. Branding. This is a specific enterprise feature as well because it is sent out at the time of sharing out a presentation page. But you can adjust the team settings. So this is my Frame.io live series. I can also adjust that logo that showed up on the left-hand side. But I can create branded email notifications just to either match that of my own brand or perhaps the brand of the client that I'm sharing externally with. Let's go and make this Frame.io colors. I can adjust the color and also email branded logo. Presentation pages are a little bit more static as opposed to a review link, but a presentation page, I can also adjust the accent color here by creating this. I can do this at the time of external sharing as well. But if I wanted to create a default, I could. So let's go ahead and just make our accent color blue, and let's make our background color. Let's go ahead and just make it like a light gray. I can also adjust the text color here too, just to add a little bit more customization to anything that I'm sharing out externally. And then billing. This tab will especially be applicable for you if you're managing one of our retail accounts. This is where you can input your credit card or debit card information. It'll also give you a snapshot of your team members. You could add or remove team members here on a monthly basis if you're on a pro or teams plan. Enterprise is annual or perhaps a multi-year contract as well. But billing tab will only be applicable to our admins out there. Like I mentioned, you can create as many admins as you would like on your account. I would just be cautious, especially if you have your billing details applied. Cool. I do want to share an article around custom branding, just in case you have any questions there. Let's go through this personal section, just exactly what your team can see. Underneath this team directory tab here on the left-hand side, all users will be able to get a snapshot of every single team that's associated with your account. Remember, if this is open, a user can just join into a team. So if you want to make sure that your users cannot see it or they can't join it, make sure that that team is either invite only or restricted. If it's open though, users will see exactly what I'm seeing here, which is teams that I'm not a part of, but I can join. Okay. Profile. This is where users can input a photo and their name. I would highly encourage that users do so. This would just enable you to be able to determine which users are leaving comments on what assets. So you can see here that I have my name, my photo. They'll show up anytime I leave a comment. But I also have some authentication options here too with my email address and my password. I could change all of that. I also can adjust any settings here too. Notifications. I can determine exactly how many email notifications I would like to see. I have mine set to immediate. I also can receive notifications in intervals of either 15 minutes, 30 minutes, hourly, daily, or never. I can adjust all of that right here underneath my account. So hourly would mean that I would receive an hourly update of every single comment or action that had occurred within my account. Really depends on how much action is occurring. Could get a little bit annoying if you're receiving an email every single time something happens, but that's entirely up to you. Time zone. I would encourage you to set this as well. This would just determine any time code that's associated with your assets. Also can determine when the expiration date of a link is sent to you as well. And then project notifications, you can enable or disable notifications for individual projects. So if I was to go to projects, it will give me a list of all the projects that I'm a part of. And here is where I'm able to adjust my settings and notifications associated. Cool. Apps and integrations. This will show any applicable integrations that I have, including our Frame.io app. Vimeo and Slack can also be integrated specifically for our enterprise customers. You can publish content directly to Vimeo and also Slack. You can have this enabled, meaning that you'll receive notifications via Slack when actions occur, similar to those notifications we just went through. A new person joins, new comments, new assets are uploaded, etc. Down here under applications, though, I would like to draw your attention, especially for any editors out there. If you're working in Final Cut, Premiere, or After Effects, I would highly encourage you to check out these extensions. It just means that you could have a separate panel that lives within these NLEs, specifically for Premiere and After Effects. You could sync up your time code with any comments, just making it significantly easier for the review and approval process. Connected apps will show anything that you have synced up with Frame. I have Filmic Pro. I use that for Camera Cloud. You can also remove any connected apps from here too. And then cookie preferences can always be enabled or disabled depending on your preference. And then developer settings down here on the bottom. We are open API. This is where you're able to see any tokens and actions or any apps as well. If you feel so inclined, you are welcome to check this out here. Cool. And that about covers it. That was a big crash course of everything that we just went through. But a couple of things before we wrap up for today. I do want to share an article that just talks a little bit about enterprise specific features. So if you're an enterprise customer and you say, well, what's available to me as an enterprise customer? A whole lot of specific settings and security functionality, including SSO, watermark ID, multi-team management. That certainly outlines a little bit more there. I would like to highlight that we do have a support team that's available 24/7. Just by clicking on this question mark up here in the top right, a chat bubble will show. These are actually live folks that are chatting right now. So if you have any questions, our support team is there to help. If you are an enterprise account, then they can certainly direct you over to your account team if needed. But even if you just have a question around how do I add in a user or I'm having a little bit of trouble uploading content, this support team is wonderful. They are there to help. If you have any questions, please let me know. But I lead a session very similar to this every single week, alternating between admin and just a full end-to-end workflow session. I would love to see you back here again. If you're going to Adobe Max in Miami, I hope that you have a wonderful time. Feel free to stop by the Frame.io booth. We'd love to show you what's new and what's coming. But on behalf of our entire team, thank you so much for joining me today. I haven't seen any questions come through, but you know where to find me if anything else comes up. You could also reach out to our support team. They're happy to help. But I hope that this was a helpful session. This was your ultimate Frame.io admin guide. If you're watching this pre-recorded, thanks again for joining me. And for those of you joining me live, I hope that this was helpful. We're really honored to be a part of your creative process. Thanks for letting us be a part of it. Wherever you're tuning in from, I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you again, and we will see you next time. Bye.